These are murder victims in the city of Oakland. And this is part 2 of Why the Hell Be Good. In part 1, I talked about the breakdown in the cultural transmission belt that carries the moral law to each generation, a breakdown that I actually saw up close in the criminal subpopulation, a breakdown that is spreading. Crime control is thug control. Welcome to Thugology101. Now, the intergenerational cultural transmission belt needs to include many of the Bible's moral injunctions. Among them, we recognize the Ten Commandments. There are many other injunctions contained in the Torah and in the Bible and in other religious writings, but they're all easily recognizable, and few, if any, of them that relate to interpersonal relationships are at all in dispute. This is a picture of the California Penal Code section dealing with murder. Here's my question. We know that the police enforce the penal code. Who enforces the moral law? But without real boundaries taken seriously, the societal order quickly devolves into a war zone. I mentioned Oakland, California. Here's a depiction of some bail bonds farms right outside the courthouse and right outside the police station. It's a city of about 400,000 people. It has an annual murder rate that trends towards 40 murders per 100,000. Now, if the U.S. had a murder rate of 40 per 100,000, we'd be losing 2 times more people to murder in a single year, more than 100,000 bodies, more than twice the number of soldiers we lost in combat during the entire Vietnam War. Surely, the prime moral directive of this time is the injunction not to murder. And yet, there is a disabling condition in the culture, often expressed in religious institutions and often expressed in secular institutions. I'm going to refer to it without any political implications as cultural liberalism. This movement, writ large, is a benign pattern of social evolution characterized by its relentless challenging of boundaries. The liberal project has worked wonderfully, especially when it broke down social boundaries between royals and commoners, slaves and free, and dissolved the political boundaries between feudal lords and their vassals, and between male voters and all adults. On some level, we're all liberals these days. In the early 20th century, however, the liberal project began to undermine moral boundaries themselves. This paved the way for the reemergence of barbarism. We saw it in the crimes of Hitler and Stalin, and we are reaping that barbarian harvest in the inner city. The conservative project is about preserving boundaries. All morally aware people respect moral boundaries. On some level, we're all conservatives these days. But within the sophisticated intelligentsia, moral boundaries tend to have become blurred. Even those that separate right and wrong, evil and the sacred, evasion and accountability. This happened when some influential moral leaders, secular and religious, adopted a brand new savior, the great therapy solution. I can hear them now singing a camp song together and following it up with a moral gesture or two. Now, forgive this as parody because it comes as parody fairly close to what I believe to be the truth. We all need to be more clear-headed about the weaknesses of the therapeutic model, because when we toss out our moral boundaries, whether in the service of therapy or diversity or misplaced compassion, we invite great trouble. Now, I've said that religions are uniquely equipped to answer the why the hell be good question. You would think that religions would be a bulwark against the moral breakdown. Why is this not happening? There are several lessons here. Lesson 1. Males especially need bright-line boundaries and clear, consistent consequences. Females do as well, but truth be told, they respond more readily than males to nurture and to the appeal to one's better angels. Modern liberal religion is talking past the men to the women. 2. The time-honored rule consequences model actually works. It is as basic to the human condition as Newton's laws are to mechanics. It is the very architecture of a working civilization. Rational consequences work because people respond to incentives and disincentives, but they work better when the rules are closely aligned with the moral law and when the moral law has understood to be the result of an independent authority that transcends culture and governments and operates directly in the mind. Now here's the third lesson. Love by itself, without robust action to protect the innocent, is an invitation to thuggery. In a church or an academic setting, we may hear love conquers all, without being taught or reminded of the underlying moral foundations that protect us and enable the safety of the weak. A very good friend of mine, a devout Roman Catholic and a high-ranking law enforcement officer, now retired, told me about a meeting after Mass. It went like this. Father, he said, you talk about peace every Sunday. God bless you for being a man of peace, but I keep thinking that we are safe in this building only because my men and women in uniform carry arms every day into the rough neighborhoods a few blocks from here. They are risking their lives at this very moment to keep the peace. When you pray for peace, I wish you'd pray for them too. Now, moral systems are weakened by power and privilege-based exceptions to its reach. They are weakened when one set of rules is applied for the ins and another set of rules for the outs. Postmodern tribalism and misplaced diversity models play into this trend to make the in and out exceptions the occasion for disregarding moral boundaries. This calls us to look in Lesson 4 to the important moral boundaries, discarding for the moment the trivial ones. Are there some moral boundaries that are much more important than the others? I would submit that yes, there are. I believe there are 5. Here they are. 1. Faithfulness to one's oaths and promises versus untrustworthiness and unfaithfulness. 2. Veracity and honor versus deceit and fraud. 3. Respect for the property of others versus theft, embezzlement, and trespass. 4. Respect for the personal boundaries of others versus rape, assault, and murder. 5. Respect for family obligations versus neglect of spouses, parents, and children. Each of these boundaries is set out in one form or another in the Decalogue, in the English common law, and in the statutes of most nations. There's one overall design to protect human dignity. Now this leaves one remaining question. This is the question I started the series of free discussions. Why the hell be good? This invites us to address the question, why should we care about what happens after we die? Is there a moral authority greater than society, greater than kings and governments? Is there a source to which we all must turn? And is there an answer to this question which can cross the boundary between the secular and the religious? That will be the topic of the third and final piece in this series of 3. And I thank you for listening and paying attention. This is Jay Gaskell, the Odd Lawyer.